UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit deal has cleared its final hurdle in the House of Commons after lawmakers approved legislation that will see Britain leave the European Union by the end of this month. It ends 3 years of uncertainty and parliamentary gridlock that cost his predecessor, Theresa May, her job. Although the government doesn't have a majority in the upper house of Parliament, analysts say the bill will be approved. Brexit is due to happen on the 31st of January, and after that, the UK will have until the end of the year to iron out its future relationship with the economic bloc over trade, immigration and other issues. But European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has warned that may not be enough time to resolve all differences between London and Brussels.
With every choice comes a consequence. With every decision comes a trade-off. Without the free movement of people, you cannot have the free movement of capital, goods, and services. Without a level playing field on environment, labor, taxation, and state aid, you cannot have the highest quality access to the world's largest single market. The more divergence there is, the more distant the partnership will be. And without an extension of the transition period beyond 2020, you cannot expect to agree on every single aspect of our new partnership. We will have to prioritize.
Well, for more on this, Peter Klepper joins us live now from Belgium. He's the head of the Brussels office of the independent think tank Open Europe. Welcome back to the program, Peter. Now, we know that Brexit has been delayed several times because the UK Parliament failed time and time again to pass a Brexit deal through the lower house of the Parliament there. Now that Brexit is within sight, it's about to become law, what's the view from Brussels? What's the reaction there?
Well, everybody's really already paying attention to what comes next. So the big focus is now on the future trade arrangement between the United Kingdom and the EU. So basically this year in 2020, everything will remain the same. The UK will continue to enjoy 100% market access in return for taking over all of the European Union's legislation. It's a big question mark what comes after. Now, Boris Johnson has promised not to extend this 1 year transition period, which basically means that there is not much time to negotiate something. So European countries are currently coordinating their position, and basically by the beginning of March, they aim to start trade negotiations with the United Kingdom. Boris Johnson can still change his mind until the end of June to decide that he does want to extend this so-called transition period after all. But I think it's unlikely that he will do so. Some kind of a fudge and a lot of flexibility, I think, from both sides will be needed to sort this out.
Let's talk more about that next step, because assuming that Brexit does happen on January the 31st, the UK and the EU will essentially have 11 months to iron out its future trade relationship as well as its policies on a whole other range of issues. What are the main and thorniest issues that the two sides will have to negotiate within that period?
There's so much, really, but ultimately both sides agree that there should not be any tariffs or quotas between the EU and the UK. So I think that will be relatively easy to agree. It's true that in return for tariff-free access, the EU is asking for a so-called level playing fields, which is about making sure that the UK does not deregulate too much in terms of social regulations or environmental regulations. But it will be very hard for the EU to impose an arrangement with legal teeth. Now, more problematic is to guarantee market access. So at the moment, the UK has full market access in return for taking over all of the European Union's regulations. So not just going under a certain level, taking them over. The EU does not want a selective alignment of regulations in return for selective market access, despite the fact that this is precisely what was negotiated between the EU and Switzerland in the 1990s and which has been working very well for 20 years now. I think the EU will have to be more flexible on that. Why? Because there are areas where there's no way that the UK will basically take over all of the EU rules. Think about financial regulation. The City of London is the biggest financial center in the world. There's no way that the UK will outsource this to Brussels. But there are many regulations, particularly when it comes to manufacturing, standards for steering wheels of cars, for example, where the United Kingdom has no interest, at least not at the moment, to come up with its own standards, and where you have companies, big car manufacturers, that are very dependent of undisrupted trades in order to safeguard their just-in-time supply chains.
Yeah.
So I think the UK should be open to take over EU rules.
Okay.
But then, of course, the EU will have to move as well and allow this sort of pick and choose approach.
Okay, so much to be ironed out there, it seems. Peter Klepper in Brussels, thank you so much again for your analysis.